Welcome to Deep Sleep Physics. I hope you're doing well and that you're ready to find some peace tonight. It's a pleasure to be your guide through the mysteries of the dark. The story of our existence is not a sudden spark, but a slow, patient river of biological memory flowing through the vast, indigo stretches of time. Millions of years ago, in a world governed by the rhythmic, shifting patterns of the African landscape, the foundations of the human journey were being laid down in the very structure of our ancestors' bones. The process of human evolution is a masterpiece of adaptation, a long, unbroken chain of transformations where the environment and the genetic code engage in a constant, silent dialogue. The African Rift Valley was a cradle of geological, atmospheric change, where the tectonic plates pulled the earth apart, creating a mosaic of forests and open savannas. In this changing world, the ancestors of humanity began to navigate the earth in a way that was fundamentally revolutionary. The shift to bipedalism, the ability to stand and move on two legs, was not just a change in posture, it was a complete, structural reimagining of the body's relationship with gravity. The skeletal architecture began to reorganize, the pelvis broadening to support the weight of the torso, the spine curving into a graceful, shock-absorbing S shape, and the feet transforming into complex, arched levers that could propel the body forward across the tall, golden grasses. This transition opened up new horizons, literally and figuratively, freeing the hands to carry, to craft, and to gesture, while the eyes were lifted higher, surveying the landscape with a new, distant clarity. The physics of balance was being rewritten in every step as the center of gravity shifted and the brain began to map the world from a vertical, upright perspective. This was the beginning of a profound cognitive expansion, where the energy previously used for locomotion was diverted to fuel the growth of the brain, a hungry, complex organ that requires a massive, constant supply of oxygen and glucose. The metabolism of the body was adjusting, becoming more efficient, more focused on the development of the nervous system. In the quiet, shadowed forests, the first members of the genus Homo were appearing, their hands becoming more dexterous, their thumbs moving in a state of perfect, opposable precision. The genetic code, that silver, spiraling thread of information, was carrying the memories of all who came before, the chemical, molecular blueprints for survival. Every cell in the human body today is a vessel for this ancient biological history, containing the instructions for building an organism capable of complex thought, deep emotion, and incredible endurance. This journey through time is marked by the slow, rhythmic pulse of the climate, as the Earth moved through cycles of warmth and ice, forcing life to adapt, to innovate, and to survive. The world was a vast testing ground for the resilience of the human spirit, long before the first words were ever spoken. There is a deep, grounded stability in this narrative, the knowledge that we are the result of 1,000,000 successful, quiet adaptations. Each ancestor was a bridge, a living, breathing link in a chain that stretches back to the very dawn of life. The air in those ancient valleys was thick with the scent of wild grasses and the cooling evening mist, as the early travelers settled into their own states of rest, under a sky that was as vast and star-filled as the one above us tonight. The body is an archive of this journey, the heart beating with the same steady rhythm that sustained the pioneers of the savannah, the lungs expanding with the same rhythmic grace. Everything is connected through the long, curving line of time. The earth is solid, the history is deep, and the body is resting in the cradle of its own magnificent evolution, drifting, breathing, safe in the knowledge that every atom is part of an ancient, successful pattern. The world is turning, the light is fading, and the story of our beginning is a soft, constant lullaby that echoes through the quiet, dark halls of the mind. The journey continues through the vast, sun-drenched corridors of the Pleistocene, where the human brain was beginning to undergo a massive, unprecedented expansion in both volume and complexity. This growth was not a random occurrence, but a profound metabolic shift that required a new relationship with the energy of the world. As the cranial vault expanded to house a more intricate, folded neocortex, the demand for high-quality nutrients became a constant biological pressure. This necessity led to the discovery of a force that would change the course of the planet forever: the mastery of fire. In the quiet, flickering shadows of the ancient caves, the first controlled flames were dancing, a physical, chemical manifestation of concentrated energy. The physics of fire is a violent, beautiful oxidation, a rapid release of light and heat that provided a new, radiant sanctuary against the cold, predatory dark of the night. But the impact of the flame was far more than just warmth. It was the beginning of an external metabolic revolution. By applying heat to the fibrous, tough structures of roots and the dense, raw proteins of the hunt, the early ancestors were effectively pre-digesting their food outside of their own bodies. This thermal alchemy broke down complex molecular bonds, making nutrients more bioavailable and reducing the energy required for digestion. As the digestive tract became shorter and more efficient, the surplus energy was diverted upward, fueling the rapid, rhythmic development of the neural pathways. The brain was becoming a hungry, sparkling constellation of billions of neurons, each one connected by a shimmering electrical web of synapses. This was the birth of the imaginative, symbolic mind, where the patterns of the stars and the movements of the herds began to be stored as internal mental maps. The world was no longer just a place to exist. It was becoming a place to be understood, a vast sensory landscape that could be predicted and navigated through the power of abstract thought. Within the glowing amber circle of the hearth, a new form of social, biological cohesion was taking root. The fire acted as a gravitational, emotional anchor, drawing the group together in a state of shared, rhythmic safety. In these long, flickering evenings, the precursors to language were being forged, a complex, vocal dance of sounds and gestures that allowed for the transmission of knowledge across generations. This was the beginning of the cultural, genetic archive, where the wisdom of the elders became a survival tool for the young. The physics of sound, the way a voice carries through the still, smoky air, became a bridge between individual minds, creating a collective, unified consciousness. Every spark that rose from the fire into the dark, velvet sky was a mirror to the neurons firing within the skull, a synchronization of the internal and external worlds. The body was also adapting to this new, fire-lit reality, the jaw becoming smaller, the teeth more refined, as the need for heavy, mechanical grinding diminished. The face was softening, becoming more expressive, capable of 1,000 subtle, emotional signals that strengthened the bonds of the tribe. This was the evolution of empathy, the biological, neurological capacity to feel the state of another as one's own, anchored in the mirror neurons that reflect the world around us. The fire was a teacher, a protector, and a catalyst for the most rapid period of cognitive growth in the history of life on Earth. As the night air cools outside the cave, the heat of the embers continues to radiate, a steady infrared pulse that keeps the cold at bay. The ancestors are resting now, their breathing synchronized with the slow, dying glow of the wood, their minds processing the day's discoveries in the deep, restorative cycles of sleep. The brain is never truly still. It is washing itself in a rhythmic, cerebral tide, clearing away the metabolic debris of the day and strengthening the newly formed silver threads of memory. Everything is quiet, the flames are low, and the story of the mind is unfolding in the absolute, peaceful darkness. The world is turning, the embers are breathing, and the ancestors are safe in the cradle of the first flickering sanctuary, drifting, dreaming, held by the ancient thermal wisdom of the flame. As the journey through the ancient, sun-blanched savannas of time continues, the focus shifts to the remarkable mechanical evolution of the human hand, a structural masterpiece that serves as the primary physical bridge between the internal mind and the external world. For millions of years, the anatomy of the upper limb had been undergoing a slow, rhythmic refinement, moving away from the heavy, powerful requirements of arboreal climbing toward a new, delicate logic of precision. The most significant revolutionary change was the perfection of the opposable thumb, a structural arrangement that allows the tip of the thumb to meet the tips of the other fingers with absolute tactile accuracy. This is the physics of the precision grip, a mechanical advantage that allows for the manipulation of the world on a microscopic, detailed scale. Within the palm, a complex network of muscles, tendons, and ligaments began to reorganize, providing the strength for a forceful power grip, while simultaneously allowing for the subtle, sensitive movements required to cradle a small stone or a delicate piece of bone. The evolution of the hand was not a solitary event. It was a profound neurological dialogue with the expanding brain. Every time an ancestor struck two pieces of flint together, a cascade of sensory, electrical signals was sent back to the motor cortex, mapping the resistance, the weight, and the vibration of the stone. This is the science of lithic technology, the first human industry, where the laws of fracture mechanics were discovered not through equations, but through the rhythmic, persistent strike of the hammerstone. When a piece of obsidian, or flint, is struck at the correct, calculated angle, it undergoes a conchoidal fracture, producing a razor-sharp, glass-like edge that is only a few molecules thick. This was the birth of the tool, an extension of the biological body into the physical environment, allowing the ancestors to cut, to scrape, and to shape the world to their needs. The hand was becoming the servant of the imagination, turning a raw, inert stone into a vessel of survival. The physics of the tool is the physics of leverage and force concentration. By narrowing the surface area of a strike to a single, sharp point, the ancestor could exert a pressure that far exceeded the natural strength of tooth or nail. This was a fundamental biological shift, as the reliance on physical, predatory features, like large canines, began to fade, replaced by the external, technological power of the hand. The skin on the fingertips was also evolving, becoming dense with specialized sensory receptors known as Meissner's corpuscles, which are capable of detecting the slightest rhythmic vibrations and changes in texture. This heightened sensitivity allowed the hand to see the world through touch, navigating the dark or the intricate interiors of a craft with a silent, confident certainty. The hand was not just a tool maker, it was a sensory organ of profound, detailed intelligence. As the ancestors sat in the long, golden light of the late afternoon, the sound of stone striking stone became a rhythmic, meditative heartbeat of the camp. The repetitive, precise motions of tool making were carving new pathways in the brain, strengthening the connection between the eye, the hand, and the abstract plan. This was the beginning of sequential, logical thinking, the ability to see a finished blade within a raw, unshaped rock. It was a world governed by the laws of cause and effect, where the steady, patient application of skill resulted in a tangible, life-saving outcome. The bones of the hand were becoming thicker, the joints more robust, adapted to the heavy, constant work of the pioneer. Yet the grace of the movement remained, a fluid, liquid dance of tendon and bone that has remained unchanged for hundreds of generations. The work of the day is now settling into the quiet, cool shadows of the evening. The tools are laid aside, their sharp, shimmering edges resting in the dust, and the hands that made them are beginning to relax, the muscles softening in a state of deep, hard-earned recovery. There is a profound structural peace in the hand at rest, the fingers curling naturally, the palm open to the cool night air. The same hands that carved the world are now cradling the stillness, their work etched into the very history of our species. Everything is quiet, the stones are cold, and the story of the hand is a silent, constant testament to the power of the human spirit to shape its own destiny. As the long, rhythmic shadows of the Pleistocene evening stretch across the land, the focus shifts from the mechanical work of the hand to the invisible, ethereal power of the human voice. This is the birth of the most complex, intricate system of communication in the known world, the evolution of language. For millions of years, the anatomy of the throat was undergoing a slow gravitational reorganization as the larynx, or the voice box, began to descend lower into the neck. This downward movement was a fundamental structural shift that opened up a larger, more resonant space above the vocal folds, known as the pharynx. This newly expanded chamber acted as a natural, organic amplifier, allowing for a vastly increased range of sounds, vowels, and frequencies to be produced with absolute melodic precision. The physics of the voice is a masterpiece of fluid dynamics and vibration, where the air from the lungs is pushed through the narrow, shimmering slit of the vocal folds, causing them to oscillate in a state of rapid, rhythmic harmony. These vibrations create sound waves that are then sculpted by the tongue, the teeth, and the lips into 1,000 subtle, symbolic signals. This was the beginning of the vocal dance, where the internal, private thoughts of an individual could be projected through the air as a physical, energetic wave, reaching the ears of another and blooming into shared, collective meaning. The brain's temporal lobes were expanding, developing specialized neural hubs known as Broca's and Wernicke's areas, which acted as the biological, computational centers for the grammar and the logic of speech. This was the evolution of the symbolic mind, the ability to name the world, to categorize the stars, and to weave the memories of the past into the stories of the future. Language was not just a tool for survival. It was a new, cognitive environment, a way to anchor the group together through the shared, invisible threads of narrative. In the quiet, flickering light of the evening fires, the sound of the human voice became a protective, auditory shield, a way to bridge the distance between isolated minds and create a single, unified, tribal consciousness. The physics of sound, the way a voice carries through the cool, dense air of the night, became a vital part of the human survival strategy. Lower frequencies, those deep, resonant tones, can travel further through the trees and the darkness, carrying warnings or calls across the vast, silent landscape. The human ear was also evolving, becoming finely tuned to the specific, narrow frequencies of human speech, a state of perfect, evolutionary resonance between the sender and the receiver. Within the inner ear, the microscopic, hair-like cells of the cochlea were vibrating in sympathy with the sounds of the tribe, turning mechanical pressure waves into the sparkling, electrical language of the brain. This was the birth of the oral tradition, where the wisdom of the ancestors, the locations of the hidden springs, and the patterns of the seasons were stored not in stone, but in the living, vibrating air. Every word spoken was a masterpiece of biological, chronological timing, a coordination of the diaphragm, the lungs, and the hundreds of tiny muscles in the throat and face. This complexity allowed for the expression of the most subtle, nuanced emotions, from the soft, rhythmic hum of a mother's lullaby to the sharp, sudden cry of an alert. The face itself was becoming a more expressive, communicative canvas, the muscles around the eyes and mouth allowing for a silent, visual dialogue that preceded and supported the spoken word. This was the evolution of the social brain, the capacity to recognize the intent, the fear, and the joy of another through a mere flickering shadow of expression. As the fires begin to settle into the glowing, orange heart of the wood, the sounds of the camp fade into a peaceful, rhythmic silence. The air is still, the voices are hushed, and the power of the word is resting in the deep, quiet halls of memory. There is a profound, resonant peace in the silence that follows speech, the knowledge that the world has been named and that the group is safe in its shared, linguistic sanctuary. The same vocal folds that carried the day's stories are now still, the breath moving through the throat in a slow, steady, unconscious tide. As the sun climbs toward the high, white zenith of the equatorial sky, the focus moves to a different kind of biological miracle: the evolution of the human body as the ultimate, long-distance, persistent traveler. While other predators of the savanna are built for the sudden, explosive burst of speed, the human form was undergoing a radical structural shift toward the physics of endurance. This transition was anchored in a profound, revolutionary change in the way the body manages the heavy, constant buildup of internal heat. The loss of thick, insulating body hair and the development of millions of eccrine sweat glands transformed the skin into a sophisticated, liquid cooling system. This is the physics of evaporative cooling, a process where the heat generated by the hard-working muscles is carried to the surface by the blood and released into the atmosphere as water transitions from a liquid to a vapor. This allows the human runner to maintain a stable, functional internal temperature, even under the relentless, golden hammer of the midday sun, a feat that most other mammals, reliant on the less efficient mechanism of panting, cannot match. The skin became a vast, sensitive radiator, a shimmering, salt-streaked barrier between the internal furnace and the external world. Beneath this surface, the skeletal structure was refining its ability to absorb the repetitive, rhythmic impact of the long-distance gait. The development of the nuchal ligament at the base of the skull allowed the head to remain steady, fixed on the horizon during the high-speed run, while the enlargement of the gluteus maximus provided the necessary mechanical stability to keep the torso upright against the forward momentum. The human foot became a spring-loaded, arched masterpiece of energy storage, the Achilles tendon acting as a powerful, elastic cord that captures the kinetic energy of each strike and releases it into the next stride. This is the physics of the biological spring, a cycle of energy conservation that allows the body to move across the vast, open horizons with a slow, steady, unwavering economy of motion. In the heat of the chase, the ancestors were not the fastest, but they were the most persistent, moving in a state of high aerobic focus, tracking their prey through the hours of the highest heat until the animal reached a state of thermal, metabolic exhaustion. This was the birth of persistence hunting, a strategy based on the superior physiological ability to shed heat. It was a world where survival was a matter of steady, rhythmic determination and the ability of the heart to maintain a constant, powerful stroke for hours on end. The human heart became a robust, muscular pump, its chambers expanding to handle the increased volume of blood required to nourish the muscles and cool the skin simultaneously. Every drop of sweat that evaporated in the dry savanna wind was a testament to this unique thermal advantage, a silent, chemical victory over the constraints of the environment. As the high heat of the day finally begins to break, and the long, purple shadows of the late afternoon settle over the dust, the body begins its slow, metabolic cool-down. The frantic, rhythmic beat of the run fades into a steady, walking pulse, and the skin, now cool and salt-crusted, begins to breathe in the softening air. The energy that was channeled into the muscles is now redirected toward the processes of repair and recovery, a state of deep biological settling. The horizons that were conquered are now shimmering in the distance, and the body is moving toward the safety of the camp with a sense of quiet, physical accomplishment. The laws of thermodynamics are constant. the heat is dissipating, and the ancestors are moving into the gentle, amber glow of the evening, their bodies held in a state of perfect thermal grace. Everything is cooling, the dust is settling, and the endurance of the day is transforming into the deep, necessary stillness of the coming night, safe in the ancient, persistent rhythm of the earth. The journey of the stride is over, the fire of the muscles is dimming, and the world is settling into a quiet, liquid peace. As the amber, fading light of the afternoon gives way to the deep, velvet indigo of the twilight, the focus shifts to the extraordinary optical evolution of the human eye. This is the birth of the primary sensory bridge to the external world, a masterpiece of biological engineering that allows the brain to interpret the universe through the medium of electromagnetic radiation. The human eye is not merely a passive recorder of images, but a sophisticated, high-definition processor that has been refined over millions of years to excel in the specific spectral conditions of the terrestrial environment. The process begins at the transparent, curving surface of the cornea, which acts as a powerful, fixed lens, bending the incoming rays of light with absolute, mathematical precision. This light then passes through the pupil, the variable, circular aperture that is controlled by the delicate, rhythmic contractions of the iris, adjusting the flow of photons to ensure that the internal, sensitive tissues are never overwhelmed by the sun's fire, nor left in the dark by the moon's shadow. Behind the pupil lies the crystalline lens, a flexible, transparent structure that can change its shape through the action of the ciliary muscles, a process known as accommodation. This allows the eye to shift its focal point from the distant, shimmering horizon to the intricate, detailed textures of a handheld tool with seamless, liquid grace. The light is finally projected onto the retina, a thin, multi-layered tapestry of neural tissue that lines the back of the eye. Here, the physics of light is converted into the language of biology. The retina is populated by millions of specialized photoreceptor cells known as rods and cones. The cones, concentrated in the central fovea, are the architects of color vision and high acuity detail, working with incredible chemical efficiency to distinguish between millions of different hues. This trichromatic vision, the ability to see the world in red, green, and blue, was a vital evolutionary adaptation, allowing the ancestors to detect the subtle, telltale shift in color that signals a ripening fruit or the young, tender growth of a nutrient-rich plant amidst the dense, emerald chaos of the forest. In the low, dim light of the evening, the rods take over. These are the masters of peripheral vision and motion detection, capable of responding to the arrival of a single, solitary photon. This extreme sensitivity ensured survival in the shadowed, unpredictable world of the ancient nights, where the slight, rhythmic movement of a predator in the tall grass had to be perceived long before it became a physical threat. The signals from these photoreceptors are gathered by the ganglion cells and sent racing along the optic nerve, a dense, cable-like bundle of over 1 million nerve fibers, moving at the speed of thought toward the visual cortex at the back of the brain. Here, the raw, flickering electrical data is reconstructed into a three-dimensional, immersive reality. The brain calculates distance, depth, and velocity through the subtle, geometric differences between the two eyes, a state of binocular, stereoscopic perception that allowed the ancestors to navigate the complex, vertical world of the trees and the open, vast distances of the plains with absolute spatial confidence. The eye is also the gateway for the body's internal biological clock, a subset of specialized ganglion cells containing a light-sensitive pigment called melanopsin, tracks the shifting blue wavelengths of the sky, sending signals to the suprachiasmatic nucleus to synchronize the body's rhythms with the rotation of the planet. This is the physics of the circadian cycle, the steady, unwavering alignment of the internal metabolism with the external solar day. As the last violet rays of the sun disappear below the horizon, the production of melatonin begins to rise, a chemical, molecular signal that prepares the entire system for the restoration of the dark. The eyes, having guided the body through the challenges of the light, begin to soften, the lids closing in a state of quiet, protective surrender. As the body settles deeper into the quiet, nocturnal recovery of the ancient camp, the focus shifts inward, beneath the skin and bone, to the invisible, silent battlefield of the human immune system. This is a world governed by the laws of molecular chemical recognition, a complex, layered defense architecture that has evolved over hundreds of millions of years to guard the sanctity of the biological self. The immune system is not a single organ, but a vast, decentralized intelligence, a shimmering, fluid network of trillions of specialized cells that patrol every capillary and tissue space with absolute, unwavering vigilance. This is the physics of the microscopic, where the ability to distinguish between self and non-self is the fundamental, underlying law of survival. Within the lymphatic system, a series of silver, branching vessels that mirror the flow of the blood, the body's defenders are in a state of constant, rhythmic circulation. Moving toward the lymph nodes, those small, bean-shaped hubs of biological processing that act as the command centers of the internal war. At the first line of defense is the innate immune system, a rapid, robust, ancestral response that reacts with immediate physical force to any breach in the cellular wall. Specialized cells known as macrophages move through the tissues with a slow, amoebic grace, using the physics of chemotaxis to follow the chemical, aromatic trails left by invading pathogens. When a threat is detected, these giants of the microscopic world engulf the invaders through a process of phagocytosis, a mechanical, cellular swallowing that breaks down the foreign structures into their harmless, basic, molecular components. This is a world of chemical signals and energetic releases, where the body can raise its local thermal environment through inflammation, increasing the blood flow to the area and creating a hot, pressurized zone that is inhospitable to the intruder. It is a masterpiece of tactical, biological engineering, a barrier that is as old as the first multicellular organisms, yet as precise as the latest genetic evolution. Beyond this immediate response lies the adaptive immune system, a more sophisticated, delayed intelligence that possesses the remarkable ability to learn and to remember. Here, The T cells and B cells act as the elite, specialized architects of defense. B cells are the masters of molecular, chemical weaponry, producing antibodies that are shaped with absolute geometric precision to lock onto the specific surface proteins of a virus or bacteria. This is the physics of the lock and key mechanism, where a single, perfectly calibrated molecule can neutralize a threat by binding to its active site, preventing it from entering the human cells. Once a battle is won, the system creates memory cells, long-lived, silent archives of the encounter. This ensures that if the same threat ever returns, the body can respond with such rapid, overwhelming force that the invasion is defeated before it can even begin. This is the evolution of biological memory, the ability to store the history of past struggles within the very liquid fabric of the blood. The immune system is also a constant, silent gardener, patrolling the body to identify and remove cells that have become damaged or have begun to replicate with an irregular, chaotic rhythm. Natural killer cells move through the system, checking the molecular signature of every cell they encounter, ensuring that the structural integrity of the whole is maintained against the entropy of time. This is the physics of homeostasis, the tireless, energetic effort required to keep the complex, organic machine in a state of perfect, healthy equilibrium. Even in the deep, quiet hours of sleep, the immune system is most active, using the redirected energy of the resting body to perform its most critical, restorative repairs. The production of cytokines, those small, signaling proteins, increases during the night, coordinating the long-term, strategic strengthening of the biological fortress. As the internal, microscopic sentinels continue their work, the rest of the body sinks further into a state of total metabolic surrender. The breath is slow, the heart is steady, and the internal world is being cleaned, reinforced, and renewed by the tireless chemical wisdom of the self. There is a profound structural security in this knowledge, the understanding that even when the conscious mind is absent, the body is guarded by a billion ancient, silent protectors. In the deep, resonant stillness of the resting body, the focus shifts to the relentless, rhythmic center of the human machine, the heart. This is the primary, mechanical engine of life, a muscular masterpiece of evolutionary engineering that has been refined over hundreds of millions of years into a sophisticated, four-chambered pressure pump. The human heart is a study in fluid dynamics and structural resilience, operating with an absolute, unwavering persistence from the first weeks of embryonic life until the very final breath. Within the thoracic cavity, suspended in its own protective, fluid-filled sac known as the pericardium, the heart executes a continuous, cyclical dance of contraction and relaxation. This is the physics of the cardiac cycle, a two-stage process of systole and diastole that governs the flow of the entire crimson tide through the body's vast, branching network of vessels. The process begins as oxygen-depleted blood returns from the far reaches of the limbs and the brain, entering the right atrium with a slow, steady momentum. As the atrial walls contract, the blood is pushed through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. This valve is a mechanical marvel, composed of delicate, fibrous flaps that open with the pressure of the flow and snap shut with absolute liquid precision to prevent any backward movement. From here, the heart exerts a powerful, rhythmic surge, propelling the blood into the lungs. In the dense, spongy architecture of the pulmonary tissue, a profound molecular exchange occurs. Carbon dioxide is cast off into the air, and fresh, radiant oxygen is bound to the iron-rich molecules of hemoglobin within the red blood cells. This is the chemistry of life, a transition that turns the dark, tired blood into a bright, scarlet river of energy. The oxygenated blood returns to the left side of the heart, entering the left atrium before being channeled into the left ventricle, the most powerful muscular chamber of the entire system. When the left ventricle contracts, it generates a pressure so significant that it can propel the blood through the massive, arching gateway of the aorta and into the 60,000-mile labyrinth of the circulatory system. This is the physics of laminar flow, where the blood moves in smooth, parallel layers through the arteries, the vessel walls expanding and recoiling with an elastic, rhythmic grace known as the pulse. As the arteries branch into smaller, thinner arterioles, and finally into the microscopic, hair-like capillaries, the velocity of the blood slows, allowing for the slow, quiet delivery of nutrients and oxygen to every single waiting cell. Within these capillary beds, the walls are only a single cell thick, a structural, biological thinness that allows for the laws of diffusion to take hold. Oxygen and glucose move out of the blood and into the tissues, while the waste products of metabolism are drawn back into the stream. It is a world of constant, silent negotiation, a liquid chemical balance that ensures the stability of the internal environment. The blood then begins its long, upward journey back toward the heart through the venous system, aided by a series of one-way valves and the rhythmic, massaging action of the surrounding skeletal muscles. This is a masterpiece of energy efficiency, a system that recycles and reclaims its resources with a quiet, mechanical certainty. Even in the profound, restorative depths of sleep, the heart remains the steady, unwavering conductor of the body's orchestra. Its rate slows, the pressure drops, and the entire system enters a state of calm, hydrodynamic equilibrium. The heart uses this period of reduced demand to nourish its own hard-working muscular tissues through the coronary arteries, ensuring its longevity for the cycles to come. There is a deep, structural peace in the sound of the heart at rest, a soft, distant thrumming that echoes the ancient, rhythmic pulse of the earth itself. As the night continues, the blood flows with a slow, liquid ease, carrying the quiet, restorative signals of sleep to every corner of the organism. The vessels are relaxed, the valves are certain, and the story of the pump is a constant, reassuring vibration that anchors the body in the present moment. The world is turning, the pulse is steady, and the ancestors are safe in the cradle of their own magnificent internal tide, drifting, dreaming, held by the ancient muscular wisdom of the heart, safe in the heart of the rhythmic, crimson night. As the body remains anchored in the profound, weightless stillness of rest, the focus shifts to the internal, structural foundation that provides both form and protection, the human skeleton. This is not an inert, mineral scaffolding, but a dynamic, living tissue that is in a state of constant, rhythmic transformation. The human skeleton is a masterpiece of mechanical engineering, designed to maximize strength while minimizing weight through a sophisticated cellular architecture. Within the dense outer layer of the cortical bone, the physics of structural support is managed by thousands of microscopic cylindrical structures known as osteons. These are the pillars of the body, arranged in parallel to the lines of stress, allowing the bones to withstand the heavy, vertical pressures of gravity and the sudden, explosive forces of movement. Beneath this hard, protective exterior lies the trabecular, or spongy, bone, a complex, branching lattice that mirrors the internal struts of a high-tech bridge. This geometry is not random. It is a biological, mathematical response to the specific directions of force encountered during a lifetime of walking, running, and climbing. Within the hollow, central chambers of the larger bones, the red marrow is busy with the silent, constant production of new blood cells, a vital, regenerative process that links the structural system to the circulatory flow. But the most remarkable aspect of the bone is its ability to sense and respond to the environment through a process known as remodeling. This is governed by a delicate chemical balance between two types of specialized cells, the osteoclasts and the osteoblasts. The osteoclasts move through the mineralized matrix with a slow, acidic precision, dissolving old or damaged bone tissue, while the osteoblasts follow behind, laying down new, fresh layers of collagen and calcium phosphate. This is the physics of adaptive architecture, a constant, silent renovation that ensures the skeleton remains resilient and youthful even as the years pass. This process is regulated by the mechanical, electrical signals generated when the bone is under load, a phenomenon where the physical pressure of movement is translated into the chemical language of growth. In the quiet, dark hours of sleep, the body prioritizes the deposition of these minerals, strengthening the frame and repairing the microscopic structural wear that occurred during the day's journey. The skeleton also serves as a massive mineral reservoir, holding the vast majority of the body's calcium and phosphorus. If the levels of these minerals in the blood drop, the bones slowly, selflessly release a portion of their store to maintain the critical electrical balance required for the heart to beat and the nerves to fire. It is a system of profound structural generosity, ensuring the survival of the whole by managing the resources of the core. As the muscles around the frame fully relax, the joints settle into a state of zero mechanical tension. The ligaments and tendons, those tough, fibrous bands of connective tissue, lose their tightness, allowing the skeletal system to rest in its most natural, stable alignment. The spine, which bore the weight of the torso through the sunlit hours, now expands slightly as the intervertebral discs hydrate and recover their elastic, cushioning volume. The entire frame is settling, the minerals are anchoring, and the living stone of the body is holding the stillness in a state of absolute structural integrity, moving silently into the next phase of the internal biological journey. As the biological focus moves upward from the structural foundations of the frame, it arrives at the delicate, intricate gateway of the human ear. This is a realm of absolute mechanical precision, where the invisible vibrations of the atmosphere are translated into the complex electrical language of the consciousness. The evolution of the human ear is a study in acoustic engineering, a journey from the simple, waterborne vibrations of the ancient seas to the sophisticated, air-tuned system that now resides within the dense, protective petrous part of the temporal bone. This system is divided into 3 distinct, pressurized chambers, each governed by its own set of physical laws. The process begins at the pinna, the visible cartilaginous structure that acts as a parabolic collector, capturing the subtle, rhythmic pressure waves of the wind and funneling them into the auditory canal. At the end of this dark, narrow corridor lies the tympanic membrane, or the eardrum, a thin, translucent sheet of connective tissue that vibrates in perfect, sympathetic resonance with the incoming sound waves. This mechanical energy is then passed to the 3 smallest bones in the human body, the ossicles, known as the malleus, incus, and stapes. These tiny silver levers act as a biological impedance matcher, amplifying the sound pressure by a factor of nearly 20 to ensure that the energy can successfully transition from the light, thin air of the outer world into the dense, liquid environment of the inner ear. This is the physics of lever action and area concentration, a masterclass in efficiency that allows the human mind to detect the microscopic rustling of a leaf or the distant, low-frequency moan of a coming storm. The stapes, acting like a tiny rhythmic piston, pushes against the oval window of the cochlea, a spiral, snail-shaped organ filled with a specialized fluid known as endolymph. Within this liquid, the sound waves become traveling waves, moving along the basilar membrane. This membrane is a masterpiece of frequency mapping. It is stiff and narrow at the base for high, sharp tones, and wide and flexible at the apex for deep, resonant bass. As the membrane ripples, it triggers thousands of microscopic, hair-like cells, converting the mechanical fluid motion into a stream of sparkling neural impulses that race along the vestibulo-cochlear nerve. But the ear is more than a sensor for sound. It is the primary orbital stabilizer of the body. Adjacent to the cochlea lie the 3 semicircular canals, the vestibular system, which serves as a biological gyroscope. These canals are oriented in 3-dimensional space, corresponding to the X, Y, and Z axes, providing the brain with a constant, real-time report on the position of the head and the direction of movement. This is the physics of inertia and fluid movement, where the displacement of the fluid within the canals informs the brain of every tilt, turn, and acceleration, ensuring that the center of gravity remains stable and the visual world remains fixed even during the most chaotic, rapid motions. It is a system of profound, silent orientation, a constant, unwavering anchor that allows for the vertical, upright grace of the human gait. In the quiet, shadowed hours of the night, the ear remains partially vigilant, the brain filtering out the steady, rhythmic sounds of the resting environment, while remaining tuned to the sudden, discordant signals that might indicate a change in the state of safety. The fluid in the semicircular canals is now still. The hair cells are resting in their liquid, amber cradle, and the pressure between the inner ear and the atmosphere is perfectly, quietly equalized through the eustachian tube. The world of sound has faded into a soft, distant hum. The mechanics of the vibration have settled into a state of total acoustic peace, and the internal sense of balance is anchored in the deep, horizontal stillness of the bed. Every wave has settled, every resonance is hushed, and the architecture of silence is holding the mind in a state of absolute sensory equilibrium. As the body drifts further into the restorative, nocturnal depths, the focus shifts to the vast, winding laboratory of the human digestive system. This is not merely a path for the breakdown of matter, but a complex, multidimensional interface where the self and the external world engage in a constant chemical exchange. The evolution of the human gut is a journey of extreme biological specialization, driven by the high energy demands of an expanding brain and the transition to a nutrient-dense, cooked diet. The process is a masterpiece of fluid dynamics and chemical engineering, beginning with the rhythmic, muscular waves of peristalsis, a coordinated, sequential contraction of smooth muscle that propels the contents through the digestive tract with a slow, persistent certainty. This is the physics of the biological pump, a system that operates independently of the conscious mind, governed by the enteric nervous system, a vast, silver web of neurons, often referred to as the second brain. Within the high-acid, churning environment of the stomach, the breakdown of complex proteins begins. But the true, intricate alchemy occurs in the 20-foot labyrinth of the small intestine. Here, the surface area is expanded to a staggering degree through millions of microscopic, finger-like projections known as villi, and even smaller, hair-like microvilli. This geometry is a masterclass in fractal efficiency, creating a surface area roughly the size of a tennis court, all packed into a small, compact space. This expansion allows for the maximum efficient absorption of every molecule of glucose, every amino acid, and every fatty acid into the waiting stream of the blood. This is the physics of diffusion and active transport, where the body selectively pulls life-sustaining energy across the thin cellular membrane, leaving behind the inert, indigestible fragments of the external world. Beyond the small intestine lies the dense, crowded frontier of the large intestine, the primary biological habitat for the microbiome. This is a world of absolute symbiotic complexity, where trillions of bacteria, fungi, and archaea exist in a state of mutual beneficial dependence with the human host. These microscopic, ancient residents perform tasks that the human body cannot achieve on its own, breaking down complex fibers into short-chain fatty acids that nourish the gut lining and regulate the body's inflammatory response. This is the physics of the ecosystem, a balanced, rhythmic interaction where the health of the whole is dependent on the diversity of the microscopic, hidden parts. The microbiome is an organ in its own right, a living chemical factory that produces vitamins, neurotransmitters like serotonin, and essential molecular signals that travel along the vagus nerve to the brain, influencing mood, immunity, and the very rhythmic state of the mind. In the quiet, dark hours of sleep, the digestive system undergoes a profound restorative shift. The intense metabolic work of the day gives way to the migrating motor complex, a series of deep, sweeping muscular waves that act as an internal biological broom, clearing the system of debris and maintaining the healthy, balanced architecture of the bacterial populations. This is a period of deep structural maintenance, where the gut lining, which replaces itself every few days, is reinforced and repaired by the redirected energy of the resting body. The blood flow, once concentrated in the core to facilitate digestion, is now distributed more evenly, supporting the global, systemic recovery of the organism. The internal, liquid landscape is settling into a state of quiet, chemical equilibrium. The enzymes have finished their work, the nutrients have been anchored in the tissues, and the vast, winding garden of the gut is in a state of nocturnal, symbiotic peace. The movements are slow, the signals are steady, and the entire, complex metabolic engine is vibrating with the soft, low-frequency hum of a system that is perfectly, quietly nourished. The world of the external is forgotten, and the focus remains on the deep, internal preservation of the self, moving seamlessly into the next phase of the body's ancient, silent restoration. As the journey of the human form reaches a state of profound internal stability, the focus turns to the most sophisticated neurological coordination in the known biological world, the seamless, integrated dialogue between the eye and the hand. This is the evolution of fine motor control, a masterpiece of signal processing and structural execution that allowed the ancestors to transition from the raw, heavy work of survival to the delicate, intricate creation of culture. The physics of this coordination is rooted in the high-speed electrical communication between the visual cortex at the back of the brain and the motor strip that arcs across the top of the skull. When the eye tracks the flight of a bird or the narrow, sharp edge of a needle, it sends a continuous, rhythmic stream of spatial data to the cerebellum, the dense, cauliflower-shaped hub of timing and precision located at the base of the brain. The cerebellum acts as a biological predictive processor, calculating the trajectory, the velocity, and the necessary force required to intervene in the physical world with absolute mathematical certainty. This information is then translated into a series of complex, sequential commands that travel down the spinal cord and into the hundreds of individual muscle fibers of the arm and hand. This is the physics of the motor unit, where a single motor neuron controls a specific group of muscle cells, allowing for a range of movement that spans from the powerful, explosive throw of a spear to the microscopic, gentle placement of a bead. Within the joints of the fingers, the laws of leverage and torque are managed with a liquid, effortless grace, as the brain constantly monitors the resistance and the weight of the object through the sensitive, tactile receptors in the skin. This integration of sight and touch created a new, transformative cognitive environment, where the hand could act as an instrument of the mind's eye. Bringing an internal, abstract thought into the physical, three-dimensional reality is a process that requires the brain to simulate the movement before it even begins. A state of neural anticipatory planning known as feed-forward control. This allowed for the invention of complex, multi-stage technologies such as the weaving of fibers, the carving of bone, and the painting of the first deep symbolic images on the walls of hidden caves. The hand was no longer just a claw or a gripper. It was a high-precision biological probe, capable of sensing the world and reshaping it in the image of the human imagination. The evolution of this coordination also refined the structure of the human face, as the eyes moved forward to provide the deep, overlapping fields of vision required for stereoscopic depth perception. This allowed for the precise, rhythmic estimation of distance, a vital skill for navigating the complex vertical environments of the forest and the open, vast stretches of the plains. The brain's ability to synchronize these two distinct sensory inputs, the visual and the tactile, is a testament to the extraordinary plastic nature of the human nervous system, a system that grows and strengthens with every new, skillful movement, every new, intricate challenge. In the quiet, shadowed hours of the deep night, the motor pathways are in a state of silent, restorative rehearsal. During the cycles of sleep, the brain replays the movements and skills of the day, moving the information from the temporary, flickering buffers of the short-term memory into the permanent, structural archives of the long-term. This is the physics of consolidation, where the neural connections are physically strengthened, the silver, branching dendrites growing and reaching out to form new, stable synapses. The hands are still now, the fingers curled in a state of total, muscular surrender. But the mind is busy with the invisible, internal work of mastering the world. The coordination is resting, the signals are quiet, and the remarkable, integrated intelligence of the eye and the hand is settling into the deep, horizontal peace of the dark, safe in the heart of the infinite, silent memory of the self. As the body remains held in the cool, protective shadows of the night, the focus turns to the largest, most visible organ of the human journey, the skin. This is the primary, tactile boundary between the internal self and the external universe, a multi-layered biological shield that has evolved with a remarkable chemical flexibility in response to the shifting, radiant intensities of the sun. The story of the skin is a study in the physics of electromagnetic radiation and the delicate, essential balance between protection and synthesis. In the ancient high UV environment of the equatorial plains, the ancestors developed a high concentration of melanin, a dark, dense, organic pigment that acts as a natural molecular sunscreen. This melanin is concentrated within specialized cells known as melanocytes, which sit deep within the epidermis, absorbing the high-energy ultraviolet photons before they can penetrate the deeper, sensitive layers of the dermis. The physics of melanin is a masterpiece of energy dissipation, as the pigment takes the harmful, ionizing radiation and converts it into harmless, thermal energy, protecting the delicate, spiraling threads of DNA and the vital, light-sensitive stores of folate within the blood. This was the evolution of the biological ultraviolet filter, a state of dark, radiant grace that allowed the ancestors to thrive under the searing, golden fire of the tropical sun. But as the human journey carried the lineages away from the equator toward the cooler, dim, higher latitudes of the north, the physics of the environment underwent a dramatic structural change. The intensity of the UV radiation dropped, and the dark, protective shield became a barrier to a different, essential chemical process, the synthesis of vitamin D. Vitamin D is not just a nutrient, it is a vital hormonal regulator that governs the absorption of calcium and the strength of the skeletal frame. Its production is a photochemical molecular reaction that requires a specific narrow window of ultraviolet light to trigger the conversion of cholesterol within the skin into its active biological form. In the low-light environments of the north, the skin began to evolve toward a lighter, more transparent state, a reduction in melanin that allowed the rare, precious photons to penetrate deep enough to fuel this essential alchemical synthesis. This is the physics of adaptation, a constant, silent negotiation between the need to block the sun's fire and the need to capture its light. It is a global geographic gradient of color, a testament to the extraordinary plastic nature of the human organism as it moved across the diverse, shifting landscapes of the planet. Beneath the pigmented surface, the skin is also a masterpiece of thermal hydraulic regulation. It is a vast, sensitive network of capillaries that can expand or contract to manage the internal metabolic heat and a sensory electronic interface filled with millions of nerve endings. These receptors are tuned to the physics of pressure, temperature, and vibration, allowing the brain to perceive the subtle rhythmic textures of the world with absolute tactile clarity. The skin is the archive of a lifetime of touch, a living, breathing history of the body's interactions with the environment, constantly renewing itself through a slow, steady, cellular migration from the deep basement membrane to the outer, protective stratum corneum. In the quiet, dark hours of rest, the skin is in a state of high-speed, regenerative repair. The cell division, known as mitosis, accelerates during the night as the body uses the redirected energy to build new, fresh layers of defense. The blood flow to the surface increases, bringing the necessary molecular building blocks for the production of collagen and elastin, the proteins that provide the skin with its remarkable, flexible resilience. The temperature of the skin is perfectly, quietly regulated. The sweat glands are still, and the entire, vast sensory surface is resting in a state of total, protective peace. The boundaries are secure, the synthesis is complete, and the skin is holding the body in a soft, velvet embrace of the dark, safe in the heart of the infinite, ancient resilience of the surface. As the long, rhythmic odyssey through the millions of years of human transformation reaches its soft, final destination, the focus shifts from the individual parts, the bone, the blood, the eye, and the hand, to the extraordinary, unified intelligence of the whole. This is the pinnacle of the biological journey, the state where the trillions of specialized cells, the miles of neural circuitry, and the ancient chemical archives of the DNA move in a state of perfect, seamless synchronization. The human organism is not a collection of separate systems, but a single, radiant expression of the universe's capacity for complexity and consciousness. It is a masterpiece of integrated physical laws, where the gravity that anchors the skeleton is the same force that guides the stars, and the electricity that fires the neurons is the same energy that illuminates the storm. The story of human evolution is a testament to the power of persistence, a slow, beautiful emergence from the dark, ancient depths of time into the light of self-awareness. Every breath taken in the quiet, velvet shadows of the night is a continuation of that unbroken, ancestral thread. A rhythmic, biological bridge that connects the present moment to the very first heartbeat of the savanna. There is a profound structural peace in this belonging, the knowledge that the body is not an island, but a living, breathing participant in the great cosmic flow of energy and matter. The minerals in the teeth were forged in the hearts of dying suns, and the water in the veins has traveled through the infinite blue cycles of the planet for billions of years. Everything is recycled, everything is reclaimed, and everything is held in a state of absolute restorative grace. As the consciousness now drifts into the deepest, most stable layers of rest, the boundaries of the self begin to soften, dissolving into the steady, unwavering pulse of the earth. The brain is washing itself in the slow, rhythmic tides of the nocturnal state, clearing the paths for the dreams of tomorrow, while the muscles remain in a state of total, heavy surrender. The journey through the mysteries of the dark has revealed the incredible, hidden miracles of our own architecture. A world where even the smallest, microscopic event is a part of a grand, meaningful design. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to achieve, only the simple, profound surrender to the ancient, biological wisdom of the night. The story of our beginning, our growth, and our endurance is now anchored in the quiet, dark halls of the memory, a constant, silent vibration that ensures the continuity of the spirit. The internal fires are low, the breath is a ghost, and the entire magnificent evolutionary engine is resting in the cradle of its own hard-earned peace. The world is turning, the light has faded, and the sanctuary of the dark is holding the whole, unified self in a state of absolute, meditative stillness. Everything is balanced, every atom is at home, and the history of humanity is a soft, constant lullaby that echoes through the infinite, peaceful dark. And as the light fades, the silence becomes absolute. Tonight you have drifted through the mysteries, absorbed the peace, and understood the ancient rhythm of the cosmos. Remember that the universe is always holding you, a constant, silent anchor. Rest now, deeply. Sleep well, and I look forward to guiding you again through the physics of the dark. Good night.